Hello and welcome to this Silent King painting tutorial. As you can see here, I've built him and primed him. However, what I've done is got him in separate bits. So each figure and the cloak are done separately. So the figures are primed Leadbelcher and the cape is Mechanicus Standard Grey. We've gone Chaos Black for the main unit, and this top screaming dude I've kept separate so that I can paint separately as well. I'll talk about my Blackstone process as I do this, but first what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into something that's a bit more silvery. So I'm going to dry brush Leadbelcher across the entire thing, and then we'll come back and see what that looks like. The Leadbelcher dry brush is done and the effect is really good. For such a large model, it's much easier than trying to go silver and then darkening up the recesses or using Nuln Oil, and that's a good starting point. The next step is to use Stormhost Silver for a more specific highlight, like for some of these regions in here, maybe on the steps, and I'll show you where those highlights have been done afterwards. And then I'm going to do some of the other base colours that need to do on this model. Now, the highlighting of the orb at the back and these bits here, and then the glow on these bits down here. Now, on the box art, it's green, but for my colour scheme, I like using blues. And I'm going to do that blue with three colours, with Kalador Sky, Baharroth Blue, and Blue Horror, just to bring out a glowing effect on all these bits. So what I'll do next is I'll base coat Kalador Sky on all the orbs, all these little sections that you can see. The next step is done. Dry brush of Stormhost Silver really does pick out the lines with the edges around here, the edges of the stairs, and it just adds a bit of extra detail to the silver. You can see at the back there, it adds quite a nice contrast to it. So that was all I did there, just for a bit of highlight, and then I said I was going to go and do Kalador Sky as the base for all the blue bits. You can see underneath there, got the tentacle bits coming out, the power orb there, the little dots. At the back here, these orb glows, the big orb there, and actually on the box art, these pipes on the sides are actually also the same colour. And then the dude in the middle, Dr. Manhattan, is blue as well. Now, if you're doing this in the green colour, then you could use Tesseract Glow just over a white or grey background, and then that'll probably be done. However, we're building this up with three colours, doing some mixing to make the shininess. You could do the same with green if you used three different types of greens, based them like that. So the other thing I did with this model is also I started on the Blackstone here, and I used Incubi Darkness just to do two thin coats on these to make them look nice. And I'm following Idic Beer's Necrons and more formula for Blackstone, which is going to be Incubi Darkness base, then a wash of Colia Green shade, and then a dry brush of some sort of bright green, maybe like a Cybright green. And I think I'm going to keep the Blackstone with a green hue, because that's what I did with my Void Dragon, even though all the electricity is blue. So I've done these two as well in the bases, as you can see there. I've done the electricity in blue. I've done the Blackstone just with the Incubi Darkness, and I've kept the edges black. You might be able to tell on that the edges of the menhirs are black. Then before I tackle the interesting blues, I'm going to use a copper, maybe like Brass Scorpion, just to go through, and I'm going to pick out some of the bits and follow the box art. I mean, some of the bits around the back of here, like this orb here was like a bronzy colour. So the Blackstone is done for this point, as you can see there. It's got a green dry brush highlight on it, and it looks quite effective, I feel. I think you could probably even go over it again with a slightly brighter green. I've used Cybright green on these, like I said. And that's it for the Blackstone. And then there wasn't a great deal of the bronze bits. I will use a wash on those just to take the sharpness of that colour away. So the next stage of this model is to work with the blues, all these different blues. The first thing I'm going to do is dry brush some glowing effects. So I'm just going to use the Kalador Sky and just dry brush around the area to create a glow. And it's the same for all of these bits. So around there, inside here. On the orbs and on the electricity bits at the bottom, I'll use it almost like a glaze to create a point of highlight. As you can see here from my light source, there's a point there which is a bit brighter. So again, I'll build that up using these. I'll show you my Void Dragon so you can see the sort of thing that would happen with the electricity from this technique. Then a little bit differently on the Screaming Catan, or Dr. Manhattan as I call him, I'm going to layer up his skin a little bit to show some of the effects. So I'll use Baharroth Blue, mixed with some Calidor on his flesh, and I'm going to avoid the recesses. So I'm just going to do it on the tops of his abs and his pecs, but I'm going to leave the recesses as they are, and they're going to be the dark colour with the Baharroth, and then I will edge highlight in Blue Horror. I'd say the most complicated bit about the glowing effect is to create a nice colour transition from the thing to create a hotspot glow. And you can see here, I'm building this up and there's a central glowing point there compared to the surrounding. And that's not just the light reflecting on it, that's the actual colour. The technique I've used to build this up is glazing, and I'll show you how to do it on this one. So essentially what you want to do is you want to build up the colour and to a point at which you think the lighting is going to be. So it could be the centre. You can use any Citadel paints to do this, and what you need to do is thin it down. So I've got my Baharroth Blue here, and I've got 4 or 5 parts of water to the paint here. So I get some, so that's just mixed in the palette. I get some on my brush. What I want to do is take the majority of that off, because I don't want it to be swimming. And then using the side of the brush, I'm going to drag up to the point at which I want the light to be. And I'm doing it at the top left. And the reason for that is wherever your brush ends is the point at which most colour is deposited from your brush. Now you need to leave this to dry in between each stage, but just keep repeating it. And every time you repeat it, the fade and the colour deposit increases and increases. If you have a hairdryer on hand, just give it a quick hairdry and it speeds up the process vastly. So I'll go again, get some on the brush, take the majority of it off, and then drag the colour using the side of the brush up to the point I want the primary light source to be catching, and therefore the brightest part. Now you keep going with that until you build up the colour as you want it. That's my hotspot just there, and then you can move on to your next brightest colour. So again, I've got Blue Horror mixed with water, 4 or 5 parts water to Blue Horror. Take the majority of it off on your palette and do the same technique. And then this time though, we're not going to have as big a brush strokes. Depending on where you decide the glow to be, depends on where you finish your brush stroke. And you can take as much time over this as you feel you need to. Obviously with the hairdryer, speeds it up, but it is a time consuming process, but the effect does look good. So for the blue highlighting, I showed you one technique, which is the glazing, which works really well, creates a nice smooth transition. But then I tried another technique, which was just dry brushing, and I used slightly different colours, and it created still a nice glowing transition effect. So that's the orb there, was done with half glazing, half dry brushing. These glowing bits here, same technique. And then this dude, you might be able to tell, there's some interesting colours there. He's been dry brushed. The gem in his chest and his plating, I'm going to use Soulstone Glow on that, so it matches the blue colour scheme. And then now I've finished all the dry brushing on the model, the power nodules here, these little tiny recessed power nodules, I'm going to paint using the Brass Scorpion as well. After that's done, it's just a matter of basing them, using whatever basing pattern you like. I like to use some PVA glue from Geek Gaming's and their base ready kit. That's the chariot, or his flying seat, complete. It's a brilliant centrepiece model, this, and all we need to do now is paint up the Necrons in whatever scheme you like to do. The fact they're already lead belcher means that they're pretty much ready to go on the table straight away. The Silent King's cape is painted to your colour scheme. Please keep an eye out for the channel for the painting videos for the Necron models themselves. That'll be coming out soon. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, drop us a like. Think about subscribing. Thanks very much. Bye.